So this is just a supplemental video to my first one. I didn't really describe the classroom setting or a greater background of my ELL students that I got to work with. So this is just a really quick summary on that. As I state, I worked with 4 students from 2 different classrooms. 3 were Spanish-speaking students. They were level 1, and they were in my 7th period with my 7th grade classroom. And then 1 student was a level 3 learner. She was from India, and she was in my 1st period when I would visit. So my level 1 students, I had the trickiest time working with them. I think the teacher did as well. There were classroom management practices that I personally didn't really agree with that I think maybe could have hindered them. I noticed that the teacher did have them always sitting together, these 3 students that were ELL 1. I think that this was tricky because they really depended on each other as crutches. They all spoke Spanish, so during class participation or during lessons, they really only spoke Spanish to each other. And I would say probably for like 90% of the time that I was in that classroom, I rarely ever heard those students speak English. My teacher was also well-spoken in Spanish. He had served a mission in a Spanish-speaking country, so a lot of the time they came to him and just spoke Spanish, and he would revert back to English in responding to them, but again, they were comfortable with Spanish, and so when they would ask him questions, when they would ask to use the restroom, they only spoke Spanish. There was one student that, she was a young girl, and during our stage practice, I remember she got on the computer really quickly, and then probably within 5 minutes of the class starting their presentation or their tests, she got up and she went to the teacher, and in Spanish, she told him she was finished, then she went and sat down, and that's when he came to me and he said, she understands me, she understands English, she doesn't want to apply herself to it. So that was a really tricky example because he was even telling me, like, I know that she understands me because she listens to what I say, and there are certain times in her writing that she writes English well, but he was like, she just doesn't want to apply herself. So that was a really big difference that I saw with my level one learners in comparison to my level 3 learner. Mastered in reading and writing. She was actually in the middle, or she was the only one in that classroom, so she was never seated to just the teacher or in a special spot. She was always in different spots during the day. So she really immersed herself with the native English speakers, and she always participated in class. She was always speaking English. As I say in my video, her only difference was that her pronunciation was off. But I would say, again, in comparison to the other classes, or the other ELL students, she was more immersed in the native language. And I think that the way that my classroom was run, I would have wished that there was a better chance for my level 1 students to be involved, because if they had been sitting with other English speakers, they would have been able to get help from that. It would have also forced them to speak English in asking questions because the students next to them, their classmates, didn't have the Spanish language, understanding of the Spanish language. So it would have forced them to speak to those students instead of simply themselves and their teacher. So that's just a little background on my students, and thank you.